Mysticism came with me to this world. A black cat ran across our path. She said that it was definitely something which she couldn't call a human being. With 6 green lights hanging over our house. Something small was sitting on the table, standing next to her bed. Lisa, you're a witch! Burn the witch! Burn the witch! Hello, Lisa greets you on her mystical channel. And on the eve of Halloween, I simply must shoot my mystical video for you. Thanks God, there are enough stories in my life that at least claim to be poltergeist. Mysticism came with me to this world when I was very small, and apparently, like all children under 4, I didn't distinguish night sleep from reality in my memory. I have very good memories of a dream where I'm looking out of the window of my apartment. We were living on 9th floor, and see that the big Dalmatian dog as high as 3rd floor standing at the front door. And it didn't seem unusual for me. Or a huge multicolored snake crawling from the back of the window pane. Of course, they were just dreams, and real mysticism began a little bit later. The first unusual case occurred with our family when I was 6, and we were returning from the south by the beginning of school year. Our family had a blue minibus, and unfortunately, halfway home, around 2,000 kilometers to go, we got in a very terrible car accident. Shortly before it, a black cat ran across our path. If anyone knows this sign, it's not very good. At the time of the accident, we wanted to overtake the truck with a trailer, but he didn't notice our car and began overtaking another car, so that he pushed our minibus to the side. The car turned over, and by some miracle, that didn't allow us to fall off the cliff. I only remember how I fell on the glass of the side window, and bright orange sparks flew from my hands. We had a new car, and its mileage was, as we saw later, 666 kilometers at the time of the accident. We were very lucky. No one was badly injured, and I generally remained without a single bruise. I will never forget this accident, especially how we were throwing the broken watermelons and acoustic guitar into the cliff. The number 6, despite this case, is my favorite lucky number. It's my karmic number if you will add up all the numbers of my birthday, and it's a number of lovers card in tarot. 6 is also a number of the universe because God created the earth in 6 days, as they say. So I even have a tattoo with the number 6 on my neck. And my cell phone ends at 666. I believe that this accident was a rather lucky event because we miraculously didn't fly off the highway to the cliff. And also, I love the song Route 66. Another scary story is connected with a village in the south of Russia where lives my grandmother. Granny told how one evening she saw how a large gorilla-like shaggy creature jumped from the apple tree in the garden and ran away. Then in fear, Granny barely carried away her legs. She said that it was definitely something which she couldn't call a human being. But you can't find gorillas in the south of Russia, so what it was, still no one knows. In the same village, my sister Maya saw the UFO. Late in the evening, on the street, she saw a certain object with 6 green lights hanging over our house. It was just hanging without any movement and then quickly evaporated. My sister has been always a level-headed person, not a fantasist at all, and according to her, she was so scared that she remained speechless for several seconds. And one more UFO occasion took place in the same village. My aunt was sunbathing on the river lying on her back. Through sunglasses she saw a sort of circle-shaped flying object descending from the heights closer to the ground right above her. She thought that it was dust on glasses, but after wiping them she saw how the object hung in the air for a few moments and then quickly disappeared. And she still wonders what it was. And you won't believe, again in the same village in the south of Russia, when I was 15 years old, some strange incident occurred. Jehovah's Witnesses walked around the village and distributing booklets with their propaganda information. Grandmother took a couple and laid it on the table in the bedroom. I slept with my grandmother in the same room, and one night I heard something rustling on the table, as if someone was turning the pages of this booklet. The night in the south was very dark and nothing was visible, although it seemed to me that something small was sitting on the table. I froze in terror and covered my head with blanket. I don't even remember how I fell asleep, but I tried to for a long time and couldn't fall asleep because it seemed to me that someone was rocking my bed and hanging over me. The next morning, I told my grandmother what happened at night and she decided to burn these booklets immediately. We went to the garden, put the booklets in the iron bucket and set it on fire. And you won't believe, booklets began to explode, literally firing up with a special sound, phew, phew, as if they contained pyrotechnics. My grandmother bounced off the bucket and, clutching her head, only managed to scream, "Oh Lord, have mercy!" The next day I was very afraid that I will hear these sounds again at night, but since there were no booklets, this didn't happen again. All my childhood I was fond of the world's greatest secrets, ancient civilizations, especially Sumerians and ancient Egypt, the legends of Atlantis, and even dreamed to become the archaeologist. Everything mythical was delighting in me. And of course, when my older sisters began to arrange spiritual sessions, I was over the moon with joy. We called the spirits of John Lennon, Alexander Pushkin, and Beethoven. And as a result, after a few years, one day, the sessions awfully scared us, and we decided not to call the spirits again. However, I had a whole separated topic about predictions and psychics, so we will leave spiritualism for the future video. Stay with me on channel. Don't worry, I have plenty of stories more for today. For example, prophetic dreams in my family deserve special attention. Sometimes my aunt saw in a dream a car, or rather only its frame, riding without wheels, as if flying above the ground, and in the car she usually saw some familiar person. As soon as she had such dream, a person from this dream suddenly died. And this has happened more than once. Also, my mother and I often see how the plane crashes in our nightmares. And then it turns out that on the same day, the aircraft crash really happened somewhere in the world. By the way, when my dad was a student, he wanted to fly to his mother for the summer holidays. But at the airport, he was told that the tickets for the flight he wanted had run out. He was upset because all his classmates were flying on this flight. But in the end, this plane crashed. And Dad took off on the next flight and learned about the crash only when he landed at the destination. There were also at least 2 prophetic dreams in my life. Unfortunately, the first connected with a tragedy, death of my good girlfriend. This happened on the eve of my graduation from the high school. That night I had a dream that I'm driving in the car, sitting on the back seat with a middle-aged man whose face I saw clearly. He was behind the wheel. I didn't see my body but saw my long dark hair. For some reason I began climbing forward and suddenly flew out of the windshield. And then the dream finished with this. The very next day, another friend called me and said that my friend, this girl, died in the accident, returning from the graduation party. Her stepfather was driving and didn't notice the car at the crossing. From the strong collision, my friend flew out of the rear seat through the windshield and crashed into the signpost. She died before the ambulance arrived. What is interesting, she had a long dark hair as me too, and maybe in my dream I felt myself in her body and predicted this crash. One night I saw the date when my friend should give birth to her daughter, and I saw clearly that it would be 22nd of June, and told her about this and forgot. And what do you think? She calls me at night of 22nd of June and screams, "Lisa, you're a witch!"
Burn the witch! Burn the witch! Burn the witch!
Do you smoke?
Burn the witch!
I just gave birth to my daughter. And also I had a very strange, almost real dreams at the time of my disappointment in love. In the first case, grandfather came to me in the dream and said, "Granddaughter, he's not worth your tears, forget him." And I never saw him in my dreams before after his death, so it was very strange and even creepy. And a few years later, when I again suffered from another unsuccessful romance, my daddy came to me and also said the similar words. "He is not worth of you. You are the best creature in the world." It turns out that men from my family support me in my dreams. He's so cute. Now let's get closer to the most creepy stories. In my life and in lives of my friends and sisters, there were quite a lot of poltergeists. And the first terrible incident occurred with a friend of my classmate. That girl rented an apartment near the cemetery, in a rather creepy place in the old house. One night she woke up from the rustle and, opening her eyes, saw that there was a house coat standing next to her bed. Just an ordinary woman's robe hanging in the air. She was terrified, screamed, and her mother came running, turned on the light, and the house coat disappeared. The girl began to look for this robe throughout the apartment and eventually found it somewhere on the mezzanine. It turned out that the house coat belonged to the previous owner of this apartment, and she was buried in the cemetery near this house. The Japanese stories deserve special attention. My older sister devoted her life to Japanese culture and Japanese language, and in her student years she wrote dissertation in Japan and now lives in Tokyo. About 10 years ago or even more, she had a boyfriend, a Japanese guy. He was a very serious young man, not a joker at all. He constantly told her various cases of meeting ghosts that occurred personally to him. But my sister also personally, being with this guy, faced a very strange phenomenon. They were in Russia, in the large apartment which this guy was renting. At the weekends, they invited friends, also young couple, and so after the party, they woke up on Sunday morning. Sister heard the dishes rattling in the kitchen as if someone was cooking breakfast. She began a roll call with friends. "Guys, morning! Why have you got up so early?" In response, silence. She screams again, calls them, and then from the room located on the other side of the apartment, her friends' voices heard. "No, we are still in bed. We thought you were already in kitchen." And ringing of dishes in the kitchen meanwhile continued. When everyone understood that there wasn't nobody in the kitchen and couldn't be there, they were awfully scared. It couldn't be somewhere from the neighbor's apartment because the sound came exactly from their kitchen. But this dishes show was over when they decided to check out what is happening in there, and they noticed nothing unusual. My sister's Japanese boyfriend also talked about how he visited Okinawa Island, a ghost lake. According to tradition, around this lake, located in a very mysterious foggy place, parents of children who died in early age stick small colored windmills in the ground as a symbol of their child souls. According to belief, it's strictly forbidden to touch these windmills because it will disturb a child's soul. But the sister's boyfriend saw that one mill fell and decided to stick it back into the ground. After this, he couldn't sleep for several nights in a row, woke up in the middle of night and saw how a little boy was sitting on the corner of his bed and staring at him.
What are you doing here?
First, he was very scared that he couldn't speak. But after getting advice from some spiritualist, he put some sweets near the bed for this boy, and it worked out. And boy never came again. The friend of the same sister, I have 3 sisters just in case, told how she lived with her Japanese boyfriend in the apartment in Osaka. He often worked on computer every night, and as a rule, she was already asleep while he was working. One night, she got up to visit toilet, and then suddenly she saw an old Japanese man coming out of bathroom, gentleman in the suit, and like nothing had happened, go into the living room. A girl was sleepy and thought that probably it was a late guest. The next morning, she asked her boyfriend, "Who was this gentleman in the suit? Why did you invite him so late?" And her boyfriend replied fearfully, "Have you seen him too?" She, "What does it mean too?" And the guy told that his ex-girlfriend saw the old Japanese in the bathroom as well. And finally, I will tell you some scary stories from my own experience. Recently, I lived and worked in a loft where commercial parties were held. You know, it's like large apartments which you can rent, invite friends, and make noise there. This loft is located in an old building, and the interior partly, for example, wooden ceilings, were constructed in the late 19th century. There used to be merchants' barns, or merchants kept their horses there. I liked the atmosphere of the place. The quiet street near the railway station and 2-story building, so you feel yourself in the countryside, although you are in the center of the big city. During the first year of my work, nothing creepy happened, although constantly I heard the creak of wooden beams, but I didn't find anything scary in it. There were 2 rooms in this loft: the large hall, like studio with kitchen and bar where the holidays were held, and the small room in which I lived. When I was going to bed, I used to close the door to the small room tightly, because it was scary to look into the darkness of the large hall. A cleaning lady also worked in this loft, and she had her personal keys. Usually, she was coming early in the morning and cleaned everything while I was still sleeping. One day I woke up from the fact that glasses are ringing at the bar. I wasn't afraid because I was sure that the cleaning was in full swing. I decided to visit the toilet, went out of the room and said good morning to the cleaning lady. But to my surprise, I saw that nobody was there. The cleaning lady was gone a long time ago, and there was nobody in the loft except me. So who was touching these glasses? I still wonder. Here is a story. Honestly, I believe in existence of ghosts. For me, ghosts are kind of phantoms, the astral bodies of sleeping people, or just died, for example, or different entities from the other worlds. You never know how many things are happening around, because we can't see everything. But honestly, such things scare me crazy, and I'm not ready to meet ghosts in real life. These are the stories especially for you before Halloween. So friends, if you like it, subscribe and like. and I wish you more pleasant, mystical coincidences in life and fewer nightmares. Sleep well, stay true and kind, the rest things never mind.